Kashey, how can I do this with treats everywhere? What do I do? Treats everywhere. During this so-called holiday season, probably do lots of air quotes with things like that, we have a lot of calendar-based roadblocks emerge because of how corporate, religious, and national culture, along with various superstitions associated with these cultures, okay, they tend to override behaviors typical of other parts of the year. We can just jump right into a beautiful SRO model here to describe this. When holiday season stimuli arise, do we have complete control over the outcome? Like, do we have complete control over them? So can we have complete control over holiday season stimuli or anything? Can we respond in a way that controls this? No, negatory. In that regard, it looks like the social environment, the culture, and the arbitrary demands that the calendar places on us because of those things kind of puts us at its mercy. As in, it looks like outcomes have a direct dependence on the stimuli that arise from the environment and the people in it. In other words, people act as products of their environment rather than as producers of their environment. For instance, if somebody gets exposed to a treat, then they eat it. But wait a second, that sounds like a response, Dr. Kashey. What the hell do you do right now? Okay, well, at first glance, it looks like a simpler stimulus-response relationship. I get exposed to a treat, I eat the treat. Okay, we can write it like that. We can write it any way we damn well please. We have our own whiteboards, right? So, depending on how we frame the interaction, we take a series of steps or respond in varying ways before that treat hits our bellies. In other words, we do have the stimulus of this thing in our proximity, and we take a bunch of different steps before we decide to swallow it. For instance, when we have a stimulus like this, we probably have little micro conversations with ourselves or have thoughts about it. Oh man, that looks delicious. Why do they get that? I want some too. How can I resist? They put it right there. Can't I enjoy myself for once? It's the holidays. A 6-pack of pianos on sale. I'd be stupid not to. Have you ever bought a 6-pack of pianos? You start making money. Yeah, we have told ourselves things like this, and I consider that a response pattern, a part of a series of things we do before we do other things. So the sort of frame that we place our SRO model in gives us a lot of opportunity and a lot of different options to analyze our behavior and the environment where the behavior takes place. It has super robust qualities like that. We can make a long list of ways we prompt ourselves. So that's sort of language we can consider prompting. We say this one thing and then we say other stuff and then we say other stuff and then we do other stuff, et cetera, et cetera. We can prompt ourselves to take further action. And in all cases, we use this sort of prompting language as permission to keep acting in the direction of this permission. We give ourselves permission to do things. Sometimes people might use the word logic, or I'll just leave it at that. You could come up with your own colorful language. I like to use the word permission. We give ourselves permission to do things. We make decisions, in other words, okay? For instance, we may move closer to the plate as another response. Reach our hand out and then open and close our hands on the treat, all these different behaviors. And then we bring the treat back to our mouth and then put the treat in our gullets and start chewing. Yes, I just ate a peanut in the shell. Fight me. I eat peanuts in shells. Do you want to fight again? Anyway, so this gets even more important when you take a forked approach, especially when you take a forked approach with food. I like forks in my food. Okay, when you take a forked approach to how we view outcomes, we take a forked approach at TCAN at how we view outcomes. We have outcomes that happen now, and we have outcomes that happen later as a result of our response. We have things that happen immediately, and then things that happen at a delay. And again, with this, depending on how you tell the story, it can look like one step or a million different steps. Like I just described, 10 different steps or whatever to eat the peanut. We can break it. I mean, a scientist could break that down into 1,000 different steps, a physiologist, a million, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. We can explain it however, or describe it however we want. The more ways that you can end up describing something like this sort of framing makes a big difference when it comes to managing ourselves, managing our own behavior, managing our thoughts, feelings, actions, and interactions with other people in the environment. I think Socrates, back me up here, or challenge me, please. I think Socrates gets credit for saying something like the unexamined life is not worth living, something of that nature. People like to give Socrates that credit. And I like it. I like where the heart goes in there. I think it gives us very little direction. Negative directions tend to mean like, well, then literally do anything else. And it makes, but no, okay. So Dr. Kashey takes a rather functional approach to this aphorism and says, okay, examine your life so that you can make it worth living. We can take this and make it actionable and useful. And that's the SRO model represents that very philosophy of examining your life so that you can make it worth living and managing ourselves according to the experiences that make life worth living so that we can have more of them. And the more experiences we have that make life worth living, the more of a life we have that we experience as worth living. Imagine that. So this brings up Dina. New to TCAN at the time, Dina worked as one of those proverbial desk athletes. She worked as a desk athlete in a biotechnology firm. Ooh, fancy. And in this instance in particular, Dina told me that she had problems with eating things at work and more specifically while working, because we eat things at work, okay? Unless you leave, but like we generally eat things at work. She spoke about eating things while working, like during work hours instead of her eating times. Dina had lamented about this holiday season stuff when she told me about what family, friends, coworkers, and vendors, biotech firms have tons of vendors because they got salespeople coming in wanting to sell you $500,000 machines. So they bring in like $10 cupcakes, by the way. So like the sales reps from biomedical industry, they bring you some cool stuff. Now, the vendors at work would bring in cool stuff. The other coworkers would bring in cool stuff. And especially the stuff that people would keep at arm's reach. Okay, like candy bowls and things in common areas, cookies, blah, 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 that they would have for themselves and allow others to have as well. So people would also keep stuff at their desks as part of this nature of sharing or whatever during the holiday season, because F everyone else during other months of the year, that when you walked around, you could take something off the person's desk and they made a game out of it, okay? And so she had a little bit of an indignant air in her voice where she goes, Dr. Kashey, how can I do this with treats everywhere? What do I do? Treats everywhere. So Dr. Kashey asked Dina the most difficult stimuli for her to take careful measures to avoid, okay? In other words, like I tried my damnedest to avoid asking what stimulates you most, because that comes out awkward, although I suppose we've all had awkward encounters like that. I said, Dina, what stimulates you the most? And she told us that in the middle afternoon, sometime after the lunch break and before dinner time, she found it the hardest time to work. She found it the hardest time to work and the easiest time to get distracted and distract herself. She already knew a lot about awareness at this point, so she killed it here in her description and observation of her own behavior. So, and at that time, she would tend to wander around looking for sensory stimulation. See what we, like, do you see what I mean here in terms of like, what the hell does this have to do with the holidays? Nothing! Please pocket this. Please pocket this, okay? We all have times during the day where we get more distractible, we distract ourselves more often, and we wander off seeking sensory stimulation. Everyone likes them some sensory stimulation. I keep spicy peanuts in my pocket, you know? So give me a thumb, up, down, or sideways, if you feel this way year round. Do you ever get distracted and wander around to get sensory stimulation other parts of the year? Yeah! It happens other months than the months between October and February, for Pete's sake. So she does go on to say that other parts of the year she would have a healthy snack. Okay. Now, aside from terms like that having a cringy effect on Dr. Kashey, we'll roll with it for now. We can take it from a fact-based standpoint of, during the rest of the year, I eat lower calorie foods to distract myself from work. And during the holiday season, I eat higher calorie foods to distract myself from work. Putting the self-sabotaging behavior of distracting ourselves from work with food to the side, we see straight away that she maintains her general behavior, distracting herself from work with food, and shapes a specific behavior relative to the seasonal environment, okay? Distracting herself from work with X foods during Y months because, as she laments, greater relative availability. When again, these foods have just as high of an availability during other parts of the year, although maybe she meant proximity. So we'll give her benefit of the doubt there, literally closer. So chronic proximity specifically holds the key to the kingdom here versus availability. You can all, I mean, in the United States and Canada, and like you can go out and get whatever the hell you want any time of the year. We can have figs in winter, so to speak. So what now? In other words, some people brought stuff in. But again, the people that bring stuff in during the holidays bring stuff in and or push food during other parts of the year too. So although Dr. Kashey does see a difference in the presentation of what people bring in and offer, because during the holiday season, you see an uptick in the giving and receiving of foods and other goodies that people make themselves versus stuff that gets store-bought, okay? The food pusher will push foods that they make themselves more often during the holidays and push foods that they buy more often during other parts of the year. They still have that sort of behavior because they get rewarded by doing that sort of thing. So they will figure out a way to push things on other people all the time. But mostly, again, we see much of the same stuff as any other part of the year. We just see the same stuff in silver, gold, blue, red, green, and white instead of the other colors. Same stuff, different colors. Okay, although it does make things things more eye-catching. Dr. Kashey questions to Dina whether that in turn makes them more mouth-catching. Take that however you want, okay? Indeed, it translates to our day-to-day behavior in either way. If we can manage this in other situations, which we can manage it now. In other words, Dina has experience of dealing with these sorts of obstacles, the same obstacles other parts of the year, but you change the color and holy cow, totally different monster. Like when you teach a dog to sit on the carpet, it does just fine. And then you put it on a tile and it freaks out. Like you speak Greek. Okay, humans the same way. Imagine that. Same thing. Back to Dina's question. Boop, 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 boop. How can I do this with treats everywhere? Dr. Kashey, what do I do? The fat phone, to which Dr. Kashey replies, but Dr. Kashey, how can I possibly manage when peanut M&M's package go from yellow to green and red and white? They change color. Sally offered me a drink at the office party in a clear glass before, but now she offered me a drink in a mug with a tree on it. Oh God, what do I do? See what I mean? Same stuff. A typical person has cravings or like mild states of perceived deprivation every single day. During those times, we have an increased probability of satiating those deprived states, okay? The environments and the time of year increase or decrease the probability of how. You'll probably eat either way. It just turns out the time of year may change the probability of what you end up eating. So does that mean that what you end up eating matters? No! You go back to the chronic behavior that happens literally every other time. So hopefully you can pocket that too in terms of analyzing our behavior. What do you do about the stimuli rather than the stimuli itself? Because the stimuli will come either way. She says, well, I tried to white knuckle it. She put her head forward like that, trying to white knuckle it. She said, she said when she tried to do that, she ends up obsessing over it. And then she goes and eats some of the treats to get rid of her obsessing. She said, I wanted to get rid of the obsessing, good gravy. I wanted to get rid of the obsessing more than I cared about the treat. An exceptional level of awareness, by the way, she had practiced. She cared more about getting rid of the obsessive ruminating about the treat than the actual eating. And she just chose to eat it to get rid of the obsessive rumination to get back to her day. Lo and behold, she positively reinforced her obsessive rumination. Even worse, she says, I'd feel bad and then I'd get mad at myself and feel bad about getting mad at myself. What a racket. So Dina could use a new skill. She got some of her awareness skills down pat. She had an idea of how to observe and describe her behavior. Now she put herself in a great position to start doing something about it, especially because she already had the skills, right? We already had proof, but that just comes down to getting enlightened in that way, so to speak. So getting a skill that she could use in everyday situations and maybe just more often during the holiday season. So how do we manage our behavior when in the presence of edibles? In the presence of edible stimuli that tend to correlate with sabotaging outcomes. So we continued our conversation and discussed some responses to these stimuli. Boop. So we talked about two specific options. Option number one to the stimuli here, including some of those treats in your day on purpose. So include on purpose. And number two, cultivate tolerance to the stimuli by refocusing. Now, what the heck does this mean? Specifically with the skill, damn, I'd like an X. Okay, new skill, new refocusing skill. Talk about today. Number one, we can explain in a straightforward way. Okay, including it on purpose. We already have an idea of enough food for ourselves. Okay, so we go about the day knowing what we will eat, and more important, when. When matters more than what. How much matters more than both. Okay, for now, we care about when we will eat it as the most important factor because during the behavioral analysis of Dina's situation, she had a specific time of day, the who, what, where, when, etc., of this happening. So feeling certain that you will have a food you want manages the obsessive rumination. So she obsessed over, should I have it? Should I not have it? What should I do? Oh my goodness. And she'd freak out and go get it just to deal with that. And so once she made the decision that, okay, I will have it, and she made that decision ahead of time, a massive amount of that obsessive rumination disappeared. She just decided ahead of time that she would have it. Yeah. So including it on purpose, major behavioral advantage. And I'll explain why in a second, okay? Even better if you plan on having it during the times you get distracted and break your own rules to have it. So she would set this rule, break her own rule, eat the food, get pissed off at herself, and do all sorts of crazy things to make her life more miserable. This way, instead of taking massive measures to change her already established behavior and positively reinforced behavior over decades, mind you, you can take into account that you already do it. You can take into account that you already respond this way and take take advantage of it and instead turn it into a legitimate win that gets you closer to your main objective. Dina already knew that she got up during these times to go to eat stuff or whatever. Now, instead of trying to fight it, she did it on purpose and included it as part of her day. Now, when she did it, she actually stuck to her plan harder when she did it. Yeah, winning. And Dina said, holy shit, I love this idea. She really did. We had good rapport. In any case, she said she loved the idea, okay? She said, I've stressed over changing myself as a person, but it turns out I already have the skills that it takes. And so she understood what I meant when I said, you already have the skills. She had the skill of getting up at 3:30 p.m. and going to another room and eating something. I would consider that a skill. You gather resources, you satiate a deprived state, et cetera, et cetera. So let us do it on purpose instead of accident. Now that brings us to point number 2, refocusing our attention. Building tolerance to the stimuli by refocusing our attention using the skill, damn, I'd like an X. Okay, so during other parts of the day, when she observes her distracted state, especially in regard to having a craving of something that exists in one of the common areas, she would say, damn, I could really use a break. She would get up, go to the common area, and then she would open the drawer to access her special stash of gum, pop the gum, leave, and then click her clicker. So she did all of the behaviors that she normally did under those circumstances. And she still positively reinforced the behavior to boot, okay? Or depending on who you talk to, okay? She managed her behavior. She discriminated and self-regulated well. And she goes, wait a second, hold the phone. Fat phone, of course. I held it up like this because we spoke over Zoom. She said, hold the phone. So I took this out, did this. I said, damn, I hate you sometimes. And I said, good. She goes, you expect me to clicker train myself like a dog? Yes. And it makes sense to laugh at that. And for those of us that laugh at that, we can see the humor because we make a comparison to a lower animal. But you know what? If you say, honey, it's dinner time, and people come running to the dinner table, we think they do that because they understand English, okay? But if you ring a dinner bell and the dog comes running for dinner, it's because the dog associates the noise with food. Guess what? Humans associate face noises with behavior too. You can just as easily associate it's dinner time to the dog and have the dog. Does that mean the dog understands English? Yes, it does, actually. So, under these circumstances, we operate under the same laws of behavior. We just have a wider variety of behaviors to take advantage of and a wider variety of ways to make ourselves miserable by doing it. So, for that reason, yes, you will clicker train yourself like a dog, Dina, I said. She goes, that's awesome. She loved the clicker idea, felt zero shame about it. So to that end, damn, I'd like an X. Lots of viability here. You can replace that with anything you want. So to that end, do we have direct control over the stimuli? No, silly. It already happened. It already exists. Okay. So now what the hell do we do about it? Well, we have influence over how we responded to those stimuli and how to analyze that response so that we can modify these stimuli that affect us later. So can we do anything about the stimuli that already happened? No. However, the way we respond and the outcome that comes from that response may change the nature of that stimuli the next time we encounter it. So we have indirect influence in this instance. So in effect, changing how we respond to them now affects the nature of that stimuli later. Because if we respond, like for instance, by going to the common area and eating all the things in the common area, well, then it relieves that state of deprivation right now, and then leads to stress, grief, hassle, weight gain, punishment, etc., which we then want to avoid, and we avoid it by doing more eating, and so it ends up reinforcing a totally different set of behaviors that cause more problems than it solves. Treats everywhere, what do I do? Okay, we'll examine the situation so that we may behave in ways that net us more outcomes that make life worth living now and later. So what does that mean? It means you'll get invited to parties, but you get invited to places now anyway. Now, right, this time of year, the parties just have different colors and different noises. I will just repeat that over and over. Same stuff. It means people will still push food and drinks and other things on you, maybe in different colored glasses, okay? Different colored drinks. It will appear as if the environment itself pushes treats on you. But that kind of sounds like every other day of the damn year. And during those days, we can already manage it pretty well. So we already have a lot of evidence here stacking up in our favor. So if you can do it then, which you know you can, you have evidence of doing, you have evidence to support it, that means you can do it now. Good. Another step closer. So let's go back to how we give ourselves ourselves permission. We can tell ourselves that this impulsive behavior will make us happy having done it. And well, the outcome, does that outcome pay out now and later, or even now? Maybe kind of sometimes now. We can avoid bad stuff now, maybe by creating more bad stuff later, which gives us more stuff to avoid. And then, we end up driving ourselves insane, right? After all, we do want to enjoy ourselves here, and to enjoy ourselves, it means mimicking what other people do to enjoy themselves in the same setting and so forth. And that means eating, drinking, and whatever else, even if it creates problems for us, because we can only enjoy ourselves under those circumstances. So now we can think about some other outcomes, which we can also plot in an SRO fashion. So for instance, we have the outcome of weight gain also acts as its own frustrating stimulus, and then beating ourselves up, which creates further emotional behavioral disturbance, which increases the chances of more weight gain. And around the cycle of insanity we go. Last and most important, the positive reinforcement of eating and drinking only increases the probability of those outcomes happening again and again and again. In other words, we literally reward ourselves for acting in the ways that make us miserable, because logic. In short, we increase the probability of doing it again later. That sounds like an amazing way to spend the holiday season. On the other hand, if we manage our thoughts, feelings, actions, and interactions, then we will behave in ways that allow us to enjoy this wonderful part of the year and come out the other side better than how we entered. And this, in turn, makes us enjoy the holiday season much more. And we do that by having an understanding of the stimuli that lie ahead, which we do already. You already know what the hell goes on during holidays. So instead of seeing how we behave on accident, we can analyze this now on purpose so that we can take action with purpose. This way, we behave in ways that help us now and later. We more or less already encounter wall-to-wall treats any other day of the year, and during the holiday season, they just add more colors and noises, or add different colors and different noises to make them look different, but we already have the skills to do this. So let's see what happened with Dina. So she carried around her clicker around her neck like a badge. Indeed, she already had a badge, okay? So she carried her clicker around the neck like a badge of honor. And whenever a coworker asked about it, she told them with exactitude why she had it, what she did with it, and the effect it had. Just told them straight up. It helps working with a bunch of scientists. However, you can still tell anybody what the hell you do if you want. And drawing attention to it, okay? How you wear the hat matters, and what hat you wear, so to speak, okay? She had strong assertiveness skills, obviously, and it rubbed off on her little cubicle section of about a dozen people. So, in other words, in a few days, check this out, they all had clickers. In a few days, they all had clickers. And they put the holiday treats out in the common area on purpose. They all brought a bunch of holiday treats and put them in the common area and made this pyramid of holiday treats. I wish I had a picture of it. Okay? They all put it in the common area on purpose. And like a lot of science dorks, get this, they kept a gigantic graph paper at the common area next to the literal pyramid of treats. And everyone pledged X dollars or X cents per click. And then they pooled that money and did a super fun office outing, and they chose axe throwing because obviously people in the biotechnology industry choose axe throwing as their holiday party outing, duh. So when somebody would walk into the common area, they would, damn, I'd like a break. They'd go get the book, like they had a giant bowl of gum at this point, they'd take a piece of gum, and sometimes they would just pocket it, okay? The whole point just has to do with mimicking the behavior, okay? You can go get a piece of gum and put it in your pocket just to keep it with you. And they would click, and they would put that click on the graph. And you wanna know something cooler? Boop. The dozen or so coworkers said we got 12 dorks. They lost 41 pounds over 4-week period. That means on average, they lost about 0.85 pounds per week per person just by playing this game together. They turned it into a game. And even cooler, their department got exceptional marks for that quarter, and they all got bonuses, okay? They all got bonuses for the whole quarter because of that 4-week period, okay? They did this for 4 work weeks or 20 work days or 28 days total. Dina continued to use the skill at home for other things and continues to this day when special occasions arise. Taking breaths would help more, okay? Their productivity skyrocketed for that 20 work days, enough to get them bonuses for the quarter. Just so you know, I love science. Especially because during that time, the other departments slumped. Does anyone wonder why? Probably giving themselves permission. Man, this time of year is real slow. So slow, I gotta go to the common area and get cookies. So the clicker would do a lot of useful stuff. Clicker, useful stuff. Technical terms here. Okay, useful stuff. Positive reinforcement. Clicker trained myself like a dog? Yes, okay. So this would act as positive reinforcement for sticking to her plan. She would click after she got the gum and left, okay? This would also mean it gave us a rate. Rate means stuff over time. In this instance, she could track how many times she went out to the common area per day, per week, per whatever. It gave her a rate. And this rate, this data also gave us interesting information because I'll get to in a second. It would also decrease the chances she would go off track when she got distracted. So as a result, as an ultimate result, decreased distraction. Then as the ultimate result, the tolerance to all of these stimuli, the holiday season stimuli, goes through the roof. Hopefully your tolerance to my handwriting goes through the roof too. I get excited, okay? So many spicy peanuts. So her tolerance to these stimuli went through the damn roof because she could refocus her attention after she got stimulated, the R. So she'd get stimulated, and as a response, she'd do this refocusing skill. Damn, I'd like an X. I'd like a break. So she would take her little break, and those breaks would get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until she would just click. And that click did enough to refocus her attention. So when she clicked, she went right back. And so this has a secondary effect of improving her awareness and shrinking how often she got distracted, because then she noticed like, holy shit, I got up 12 times during the workday. And so it ended up reinforcing and in a very light way, punishing in a delayed way, because it reinforced her staying on plan, but it also kept track of how many times she got distracted. And so for that reason, she wanted that number to also go down. And so the fewer clicks she had, it meant the more her attention span grew until she went from an attention deficit to an attention surplus and got a bonus for her entire department in 2 weeks for the quarter, or 4 weeks for the quarter. So she'd get distracted less often. And when she did get distracted, she would reward herself for refocusing her attention when she did. Voila. So now we can keep it real in writing. So during the holiday season, it takes more awareness, tolerance, self-regulation, and assertiveness. It takes all this stuff we can muster. And you know what? You can do it. You've done it then, and you can do it now, for Pete's sake. Also, like if you work from home, right? We work from home, right? You can just put some goodies out on the counter in the kitchen and go out there and click and come back. It works so, like I get so excited thinking about this. It works so well. You just go, oh, I want to get one of those things, click, and then go back. And then eventually it just exists in your environment. Okay, pretty cool, right? Given your history as a human, the royal you, that has gone through a lot of holiday seasons, you already have a bulk, pun intended, of the information that will help you analyze the situations and iterate your behavior before you encounter them. Okay, you've done it before, so use those resources to your advantage. If you already know what to do before, then you can make that decision now, rather than at the time you have the highest probability of acting like a silly goose and sabotaging your progress. Like, oh God, I got exposed, what do I do? But you already know, you already have this, you already did this before. Give yourself some credit, okay? So start with the end as your priority, as in at the end of this holiday season, where will you find yourself? Closer to where you want or further away? So to keep it real in writing here, identify 3 future holiday season situations and fill out an SRM model for each. 1, holiday stimuli situation with friends and family. 1, for working and coworkers. So for those of us that work from home, we can rig those sorts of situations super easy. We have a regulated environment. And 3, the when by ourselves, which for those of us that work from home makes it easier. So we have friends and family, co-working situations, and or social situations if you already work from home, and then environment by yourself. So like shopping or late at night, knowing somewhere in the house a stash exists. Just go to that stash, get your whatever, click it, go back to your desk and then click, okay? So develop a short list of strategic responses to these sorts of stimuli for each situation that make the most sense for your given, damn, I'd like an X. You make that X whatever you want. You make that X whatever you want. It just turns into the new target behavior. Damn, I'd like a dime. Damn, I'd like a break. Damn, I'd like a X. Just replace one target behavior with another. So for many of us, that would mean incorporating some of the foods, S, into our day on purpose while still making progress. So if you said, damn, I really want pizza, well, then you can incorporate pizza into your day on purpose. Make the decision ahead of time. So by allowing ourselves to eat, so swapping to the other part here of just incorporating that stuff into our days on purpose, allowing ourselves to eat them rather than contriving distorted forms of permission, like going back and forth, freaking out, and then finally breaking your own rules, okay, can override the problems with breaking our own promises to abstain. And then punishing ourselves when we break our own promises. Ridiculousness. So that can mean catching, counting, and converting, like we just talked about, your attention of what looks like wall-to-wall sabotaging stimuli into sweating the small stuff. To give yourself credit every time you encounter a stimuli like that and stick to your plan. You can click. You can do a tally mark on your hand. You can do a tally mark on the 3x5. I did the 3x5 a long time until I realized like, I use clickers a lot working in the laboratory, specifically when I did cancer stuff. And I just like that between that and timers, I had that in my pocket already, and pun intended here. And I transitioned to that way too easy. Once you get enough tallies, you can cash those in for the fun fund and do something cool. Like, damn, I'd like an X. It does it by default. It already keeps track of all these times. You could turn each one of those clicks into $1 or whatever. whatever, I'll leave it up to you. We tend to do more things we reward ourselves for doing or get rewarded for doing. And if we reward ourselves for staying on track, then it increases the probability of staying on track. So although we encounter holiday stimuli in general, only you know the sort of holiday season stimuli, especially in regard to feeling like we have all the well foods and drinks, how it relates to your life in general. Some people have more run-ins with alcohol, some people with food, baked goods, different times of day, different types of people, et cetera, et cetera. We all can agree that we have these sorts of general stimuli. The specific ones will relate to your life specifically. Okay, so that just means applying those principles that we talked about today to yourself under those circumstances will end up helping you to cement that. Okay, so in terms of the outcome here, how does this help the situation and you now and later? How do the thoughts, feelings, actions, and interactions in the stimulating conditions differ from the thoughts, feelings, and actions in the response, differ from the thoughts, feelings, and actions you have and take as the outcome of your response? We respond to these stimuli by taking it one situation, one SRO at a time. We realize the progress we make as a side effect of making ourselves into the people it takes. We respond to these stimuli by auditing what it means to enjoy the holiday season. A lot of people think, well, I can only enjoy myself if I eat and drink. That opens up an entirely different can of worms, worth auditing what it means to enjoy yourself. So how else can we manage to enjoy a time where people in general have better dispositions? What sort of ways can we take advantage of these superstitious but still very real changes in the moods and behaviors of other people? Like, look what happened with Dina and, having them all click together, turning it into a game and throwing axes later. Does it help you build a life worth living if we keep using the calendar as permission to destroy our progress on purpose? Gross. Leaving ourselves with excess fat, excess hassles, excess grief. I have one more bomb rather to throw. Putting this in perspective of the entire year rather than this few months. Think of this in these terms, okay? This makes the holiday season a net source of misery. We just realize that misery after the holiday season ends. So from a behavior standpoint, this confuses the way we behave, because if we got punished for things as we did them, or even before we did them, it would change the way we act. However, we can delay that misery. We can delay all those problems until after the holiday season ends, and that makes it look like the rest of the year sucks, when we net most of our misery during the holiday season. Crazy enough. So we manage to delay, ignore, and even neglect the misery we accumulated until after the holiday season. And then when we finally realize it, we realize it after the holiday season ends. And this ends up confusing what to do and when to do it and what to do about it, so that we can continue progressing towards the person it takes to have the life we want. Because all that misery we have comes from the months before. We just realize it the months after, and that confuses what to do about it. And all that irritation ends up causing history to repeat itself later, so to speak. So if we can make ourselves aware of these stimuli before they happen, and we already know they exist because we've made it this far through many holidays, it grants us the opportunity to respond in ways that nets us more experience, especially during the holiday season, more experiences that make life worth living. So you now have the opportunity to set a new precedent with TKN, one that will prove you have made yourself into the person it takes to have the life you want. Thank you so much for learning. Stay rational for Pete's sake. And until next time, Dr. Kashey out.